Alrighty, welcome back to the channel, AFL Fantasy for 2024. So footy's not far underway now. There's about a month and a bit to go before it kicks off. And yeah, fantasy is going to be a bit interesting this season. I know there's a new couple of rules here and there, so there's not much data on this stuff, so we're going to have to see how it plays out, I guess. But yeah, opening round, early round buys. It's going to be interesting. Best 18 on field. So I think probably what I read into that is try to avoid picking premium plays that have that early buy round. Although I don't think it's too much of a big deal if you do pick some premiums, as long as you're not overloading on premiums with that early buy round. So I think if you have about 2 or 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 is a bit of a stretch. But if you have around that amount of players with the early buy, I think it's alright. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because opening round does factor in price movements for round one changes. So, like a player like Zach Williams, for instance, we're going to have to see how he plays during opening round, and if he plays really well, we're going to have to pick him up for round one due to that price movement. So, there's a couple bits and pieces here and there, but yeah, I've put together a preseason team that I think will be good going into round one, I guess. And I'll talk you through the selections and the players I've picked and why I've picked them. But before I do so, I'll drop a league code down in the description below. So if you guys are keen to join a league for fantasy this season, check the description right now and join up. So yeah, limited spots available. So make sure to join up. But yeah, we'll get cracking. We'll talk about our defense. And yeah, we got Nick Dacos at D1. I think this guy is hard to go by. Hard to go without. Sorry. I think he's a really good player. If not, he's going to be the best player in the competition in the next couple of coming years. He's got a real talent. He's got an elite kick, and he racks up the footy. So yeah, absolute ball magnet. I think he's possibly a bit unders, to be honest. So he's priced at 982, whilst at an average of 108. He can definitely go 115, which presents a bit of value here and there. And yeah, I think aside from the early buy, I think there's not much that can go wrong with Nick Dacos, to be honest. I mean, he does have a Hawthorn matchup coming up, which he could cop a tag, but like Nick Dacos is a gun. And I think the scary part is if you don't select him early on, you could be missing out on a lot of points, which is what happened last season. A lot of coaches actually missed Nick Dacos, and that cost them big time. So I think Nick Dacos, he's a player that you love to watch, and I think players that you love to watch on the television, most of them are fantasy friendly. So someone like Nick Dacos, I think it's hard to go by without selecting him, and I think there's definitely value there. So aside from that early round buy and that Finn McGuinness tag, I think that he should be a lock in my side at the moment. We'll talk about Harry Sheezel. So I think in the match simulation, was it, or I don't know, preseason training, I think that he was playing up forward, which is a bit of a concern, but I think that if he plays that halfback role, he can definitely improve on his average. For a player to score 97 in their first season is absolute elite stuff. So he's only going to get better as he gets more and more games. And yeah, if he gets that halfback flank role, that's all we're going to be needing to select him into our team. But we will obviously see where he lines up during that preseason game. If he plays more on the wing or maybe at half forward, I probably think we swap him out for someone like a Tom Stewart or even like a Sinclair, who are players I've been looking at. But yeah, so I'm not really keen on Sheezel at the moment, but we've got him sitting there purely based on the fact that if he plays half back, he's going to dominate and he's going to be hard to go by. So, and hard to miss. So I think, yeah, Sheezel's a good pick. He's also not got an early buy, so that is a bit convenient. And yeah, sits on our team at the moment. And this next man, Hayden Young, close to a lock. I think the fact that he's 805k, well unders what he can do. He moved into the midfield last season for Freo, and he did pretty well. I think he averaged around 100 during that time, so yeah, about 11 points unders, so there's value there. Doesn't have an early buy, and the fact that he can rack up the ball in the midfield will also boost his scoring. So I don't think there's much downside to someone like a Hayden Young, as long as he's given that midfield role, which from all I've seen, he's been playing and training with the midfield, which is really positive signs. We'll just have to watch him during that preseason game to see where he lines up. But yeah, as if I see him in the guts, that's enough to select him for me. And yeah, he sits at our D3 at the moment, so I'm happy with that pick. And then Williams and Cofford, I won't talk too much about these guys, but both of them heavily underpriced for what they can do. we've seen in the past what these two players can do, especially Nick Caulfield's junior numbers. I know that Zach Williams had a really good season. I think it was a while ago where he averaged 90 plus. So there's heaps of meat on the bone there, and a lot of money to be made with these two players. So I guess the main issue with these two is their durability. Zach Williams does have that early round bye, which is a bit of a concern, but I think given that they're fully fit, they go unscathed during the preseason. They'll probably be close to lock selections for me. And then the rookies, we've got Curtin, Pink, and Showmaker. I know Curtin has some good numbers. I'm not too sure about Pink and Showmaker. Do keep in mind the rookies are sort of there just to hold down some positions at the moment. They're not finalised. They're obviously going to change, barring round one selection as well as preseason games. So, just there's placeholders, I guess. And yeah, that's the defence. We'll go into the midfield. We've got Zach Merritt as our captain. I guess you can argue the fact that there's not much value with Zach Merritt. Like, he's priced at an average of 112. Realistically, I see the max he's going is 115, to be honest with you. But the fact we selected Zach Merritt is mainly due to his consistency. He's an extremely consistent player, and very, very rarely do you see a season from Zach Merritt where he averages less than 100. So I like the Zach Merritt pick. Do keep in mind he's got the Hawthorn matchup round 1, I believe. So that's going to be interesting. He might cop a Finn McGuinness tag. But from what I've heard, him and Darcy Parish have been lighting up the training ground, so I think that he's going to have another stellar season. And yeah, he just scores the points really well. He loves a mark, he can rack up the pill, and he tackles as well, which is really handy. So I like Zach Merritt just due to his consistency and that option as a captain for the early rounds, which is really good. And then this guy Tom Green, he's locked and loaded in my side. I don't think much is going to change. Much has got to change for him to leave my side. As long as I see him in that midfield role, obviously, during the preseason, which he has been training, I think that he's locked into my team. And I talk this guy up really highly. I think he's a better player than Nick Dacos to some extent, just due to the fact that he finds the ball at will. And yeah, he's a player that can possibly average 35 touches if he really wanted to. He's an absolute ball winner. There's a good chance he's going to be up there in the Brownlow this year, I reckon, and he's only going to get better. He's increased his average progressively each year since his debut, and yeah, like I said, he's only going to get better. He does have that early buy. You could say there's not much value there, but I still think Tom Green, with his ceiling, we saw 170 last year from him. With a ceiling, I think that he's close to a lock into my side, and I think that he's just going to take his game to another level this season as well. And then Caleb Sarong, I like this pick mainly due to the fact that, similar to Tom Green, he's increased his average each season progressively, so I don't see him going down from 108. I think he's going to be a 110 to 115 guy this season, which is, I guess, a bit of value there, not too much, but we've gone Sarong over Brayshaw mainly due to the fact that I saw a tweet somewhere that saying that Sarong attended the bulk of the centre bounces in the match simulation. So I'm not too sure if Brayshaw is playing in the midfield. I assume he is playing in the midfield, but he might be floating around trying something a bit different. But we've got Sarong in at the moment, and I think that Brayshaw is the better player, to be honest with you. But I just have a feeling that Sarong's going to have a better year than Brayshaw for some odd reason. It's just the gut feel. And yeah, we selected Sarong, no early buy, so should score well, really consistent, which is one of the major reasons that I selected him, to be honest. So he should be a consistent scorer. I think last season, low score for around 80. He's a consistent 100 every week. He doesn't really have a ceiling, Sarong, but you can just back him in to ton up most weeks. So I think that that makes him a really solid pick, especially in the early stages when you don't know who's going to do well and who's going to struggle. So Sarong's locked and loaded. Jack Steele is our M4. I think given that he has a full preseason, no injuries, unscathed, he can go average 110, which provides a lot of value. And yeah, he's a player that's averaged 120 in the past, so we know he's got the ceiling, we know he can play. Just a matter of whether or not he can go through a season unscathed without carrying an injury. So given that he's got a full preseason, playing inside mid, I think he should be like close to a lock. But there's always that concern with Jack Steele. When he gets injured, because he tends to drop off after he gets injured. So we'll see how he goes. Flanders M5, sorry. This guy's an absolute gun. He started off the year slowly, but when he went to the Suns midfield last season towards the back end, he played some really nice footy. I think new coach at Suns, they're going to love him in the guts. I only think his average is going to get better. He could potentially average 95 to 100, I think, this season, maybe even more if he's at his best. So I like the Sam Flanders pick, a lot of value there. And yeah, I think he's going to be great for Gold Coast. And he might affect someone like a Tuke Miller's score, to be honest, which is why I've probably stayed away from Tuke Miller, who you could argue is a bit of value as well. But I think Flanders might be the better pick of the two. So we've got Flanders in. Does have an early buy, which is inconvenient, but nonetheless, I think it's a great pick. George Wardlaw is our M6, so I think George Wardlaw is a really underrated prospect. I think his ownership will be pretty low, to be honest, as well. So what I saw last season was an absolute talent, to be honest. He didn't get many minutes. If you looked at his time on ground, yeah, they played about 60 to 70% time on ground for George Wardlaw. So given that he can improve his time on ground, his scoring will definitely improve with that. And it's his second year, so he's going to get more games under his belt. Playing in that midfield role, which I think that LDU is probably the only main midfielder for North. So I think if he can slot in alongside with LDU, he's going to score really well. He can take his average to possibly 80, possibly 85, which is about 20 points, which is enough to warrant selection. And the fact that he doesn't have an early buy is also really handy. So I really like George Wardlaw. I saw a tweet as well regarding the North Melbourne match simulation, and they said that Wardlaw looked really good playing in the midfield for North. So there's all positive signs of Wardlaw. I don't think you can really go wrong with the Wardlaw pick, unless he obviously doesn't play that midfield role and he's not selected in round one, obviously. But I think that if he can cement his spot in the team, he should be a good pick for the year. And then the rookies, McKercher, Sanders, great numbers. Sharp, ex-Sun, we saw what he could do, what he's done in the past. So he's a player that can score, so value there. And Clay Hall, he's been talked up for the Eagles, so I do like the pick at 200k basement price. We'll go into the Rucks, a bit different. I know a lot of coaches have gone and Grundy. I'm staying away from Grundy just due to the fact that I don't want to have too many plays with too many Sydney players with the bye. I already have James Jordan, and I did have Taylor Adams initially, so we went Xeri instead. I think Gawn is going to be a lock in everyone's teams regardless. 831k, a player that can potentially average 110 plus, so heaps of value there. And yeah, just the fact that he's got a massive ceiling makes him a captain option each week. And we saw what he can do. I think there was that one game where he scored 160, 170 when Grundy was left out of the side. So as a sole Ruckman, this guy is insane. He's a captain option most weeks. And yeah, he's going to dominate this year. I can just feel it. Sole Ruckman, so it should be good. Tristan Xeri, also a sole Ruckman, no goal scene, so he should have a good season. Yeah, I've seen Xeri play better goal scene, and he scores a lot better, so we picked him up. I think there's a lot of value there. At 580k, is it an average of 66? I'm not even sure. He only played 9 games, so he might have got discounted. But yeah, he could definitely go to average 85, maybe even 90 if he's at his best. So there's a lot of value with Xeri, and I think, don't get me wrong, I think Grundy's a great pick, but if you do have a lot of those Sydney players, it might be a bit of concern when that early buy round starts, just because of the fact you're going to be fielding like 18 or 19, you might have to trade some of those guys out. And do keep in mind, players do get injured, so it's also important. I don't mind having premiums that have the early buy, as long as you don't have 3 or 4 of them in 1 week, because that's obviously going to cause major concerns. If you have 1 or 2, 1's probably ideal. 2, you're stretching it a bit, but 1 or 2, and you should be all right. And Max Heath is going to be a loophole for the year. And yeah, forward line, I'll just touch on this quickly because the video is going for a bit of time. McRae, value, I don't think he's going to be playing midfield, I'll be honest with you. But I think at 91, what he's done in the past, hard to ignore, to be honest. No early buy. A player that's scored 120 in the past, so there's value there for sure. I'm not sure what he averages, to be honest. It just really depends where he plays. So I really hope he plays that inside mid role, but knowing Bevo, he just tosses him around, so I honestly don't know at this point. Jack Billings is an interesting pick. If you look at his footy wire stats, when he plays, I think, like 15 or more games in a season, his lowest average was about like 70-something, so he's priced at an average of, 60? That's like 13 points there. I think it was 73, to be honest. There's 13 points there. His best season was like a 98, so it's like possibly 38 points under for this guy. So there's a lot of value with Jack Billings. The only problem, I guess, he has an early buy, so I mean that might affect your selection. But aside from that, I think that he's a really good pick, and there's heaps of value there as long as he's given that wing role, which I know he'll get. I think he's a really good pick, to be honest. James Jordan is an interesting one. I know that a lot of coaches actually have James Jordan in their side. And from what I've heard, he's been training in the midfield, so that's a good indication. I don't really like Sydney, to be honest. They tend to give their younger players a lot of time on the bench, which isn't great. Especially with like someone like a Sheldrick last season, like he was playing 50% to 60% time on ground, which isn't ideal. So I don't like seeing players in my team sit on the bench, but hopefully James Jordan can prove his worth in round one. I think he'll be selected in round one, so hopefully he can prove his worth. Hopefully in the preseason we see him line up in the midfield, and hopefully he does well, obviously. And yeah, hopefully he can prove his worth round one and cement his spot in that midfield. And I think he's an absolute gun for what I've seen him at Melbourne. So I think that if he's playing that full midfield role, even like a 50-50, I think he can average 75 to 80, anywhere between that. And yeah, I think he's a great pick. I think there's lots of value there. And Harley Reid, rookie, not going to talk about him, number 1 draft pick, so there's not much we need to say. He's a great scorer, has some great numbers. Sean Manager, I think he's one of the best forwards, to be honest. His numbers in the VFL, was it? I'm not too sure. Were elite, 100 plus average, so he's a gun. And Finlay Macrae, he's playing midfield for Collingwood, so selected him due to the fact that his brother's Jack Macrae, to be honest with you. But from what I've heard, match simulation, preseason, he's been training and he's been looking absolutely amazing. So I think that Finlay Macrae will get a lot of games this season for Collingwood. And yeah, it's just a matter of whether or not he plays in that midfield. I really do hope he plays in that midfield so he can prove his worth, because we've seen glimpses of him in the past playing in that midfield, and he's done really well. So I think there's a lot of upside to Finlay Macrae. What can he average? Potentially 70 if he's at his best, which puts him a lot of value. So yeah, he sits in our team at the moment. And then Durs McCaddy, Wilson, I'm not going to talk about. They're just rookies, but most of them are likely to get a game this season, which is good. But yeah, keep in mind rookies will be changing eventually. But yeah, that's our team. If you guys have any questions, comment them down below. I hope you guys, got a bit of an insight to why I've selected these players. And yeah, leave a like, subscribe. I'll post the video closer to round 1 after the preseason games, showing you my final team and explaining the changes I made. But I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.